You ever have that feeling where you spend hours studying, you are convinced you know it, and then poof, it's just gone the next day? It is one of the most frustrating things ever. And today, we're going to dive into a method to make sure what you learn actually sticks around. Yeah, that auto delete button. It's a real thing, isn't it? You can read an entire chapter, you totally get it in the moment, but a few hours later, it's like it never happened. And the crazy part is, there's actually a scientific reason for that, right? It is so frustrating. It feels like all that hard work is just gone, tossed right in the trash. But here's a wild thought. What if the problem isn't your brain? What if it's the way you're trying to save the information in the first place? Okay, so check this out. Most of us were taught to learn passively, right? You grab a highlighter, you reread your notes over and over. But get this, some of the best students on the planet, they do the complete opposite. For them, learning isn't like sitting in a library. It's like going on a hunt. And that's what we're talking about today. It's called the Hunter Learning Method, and it's all about these four, game-changing strategies that basically flip a switch in your brain. So let's get into it. Let's unlock these four keys. All right, strategy number one, the relevance filter. You know how your brain can be kind of lazy? This is all about outsmarting that part of your brain. We have to convince it that what we're about to read is actually, important, that it's worth the energy. Seriously, just picture your brain as this super strict accountant. It's constantly looking at an energy budget asking, okay, is this information essential, like life or death important? And if the answer is a big nope, boom, it goes straight into power save mode. And that, right there, is why you start nodding off halfway through a boring chapter. And this is where the magic happens. See, just passively reading, that's basically a lullaby for your brain. You haven't given it a mission. But if you ask a question first, you create what's called a curiosity vacuum. It's like this little empty space in your mind that your brain just hates leaving empty. It's got to fill it. So instead of just seeing a boring chapter title like The Industrial Revolution and sighing, you turn it into a mission. You ask a really juicy question, something like, wait, why on earth would people ditch the countryside to go work 16-hour days in a filthy factory? All of a sudden, you're not just reading words, you're a detective hunting for clues to solve a mystery you just created. Okay, key number two, and this one is fun. It's called the generation effect. The basic idea is simple. You remember stuff you create way, way better than the stuff you just consume. And the best way to do this? Explain it like it's hot gossip. No, seriously, think about it. You hear some wild, juicy story, just one time. All these names, places, who said what, and you can tell it back to someone else almost word for word. How does that work? Why is gossip so darn memorable? Well, it's because when you're telling that story, you're not just a sponge. You're a storyteller. You're organizing the info, adding your own spin, making it a proper narrative. You are literally generating it, not just receiving it. And that act of creation, that's what burns it into your brain. So how do you actually do this? It's super simple. Study for, say, 20 minutes. Then close the book, pull out your phone, and record a 1-minute voice note explaining what you just learned to yourself. And here's the best part. The moment you stumble or go, what was that again? That's not a failure. That's a huge win. You've just found a gap in your knowledge that you can fix right now instead of on the test. All right, our third key. Now, this one might mess with your head a bit. It's called desirable difficulty. And the whole idea is if learning feels easy, you're probably not actually learning. Yep. To make memories that last, it's gotta feel a little tough. We all think that if we're just cruising through a chapter, it means we're a genius, right? Well, science says, not so fast. It turns out that without that little bit of struggle, your brain isn't really building anything new. It's that friction, that feeling of effort, that forges those strong connections in your brain. So a great way to create this desirable difficulty is with a technique called interleaving. Now, most of us do what's called blocked practice, studying math for 3 hours straight. Interleaving is the opposite. You switch it up. Maybe 30 minutes of math, then 30 minutes of history, then 30 minutes of science. And I'll be honest, it's going to feel harder. It will. Every time you switch, you're forcing your brain to stop, reset, and pull up a whole new set of files. But that extra work, that little bit of a mental workout, that's precisely what takes a weak, flimsy memory and turns it into something solid and permanent. Okay, that brings us to our last key. And honestly, this might be the most important one of all because it's what makes everything else stick. And it's sleep. I know, we all sacrifice sleep to cram more, but it turns out that's a huge, huge mistake. Let me give you a couple of analogies for this. First, think of your brain at the end of the day as a super messy desk. It's just covered with notes, books, random thoughts, total chaos. Well, sleep is like the night crew that comes in. They sort everything, file it away neatly, and get it ready for long-term storage. If you skip that, you just wake up to the same chaotic pile. Or here's another one. Pulling an all-nighter is like downloading a massive important file. You sit there for hours, you watch it get all the way to 99% complete, and then you pull the plug. The whole thing is corrupted, useless. All that time completely wasted because you never hit save. And that's literally what's happening in your brain when you cram and don't sleep. So, when you pull it all together, what do we have? The ability to really learn and remember things isn't some magic power that only smart people have. It's not about your IQ at all. It's about your method. And maybe the biggest takeaway here is this. You gotta stop thinking of your brain as a filing cabinet you just cram information into. It's not. It's a muscle. And just like any other muscle, it only grows when you challenge it, when you actually make it work. So building that muscle really just comes down to these 4 habits, right? You become a hunter, you ask the hard questions first, you talk it out, explain it out loud, you make it a little difficult on purpose, and you respect your rest. You let your brain do its job overnight. And that's really the whole game. It's about making that shift, you know? Stop being just a passive consumer of information and become an active, skilled hunter of knowledge. Because look, knowledge is a treasure that no one can ever take away from you. And now you have the 4 keys to the vault. So the only question left is, are you going to use them?